Why was it a pity that Bilbo didn't kill Gollum? And what does Frodo learn from Gandalf's comments? When I reflect on why it was a pity that Bilbo didn't kill Gollum, and what Frodo learns from Gandalf's comments, it becomes clear that Tolkien wasn't just telling a simple fantasy story. He was imparting something far deeper, a moral and philosophical perspective rooted in a worldview that modern interpretations often miss, or worse, discard entirely. Initially, Frodo's lament is understandable. After all, how much suffering could have been avoided if Gollum had been eliminated? But Gandalf, with the wisdom we have come to expect from him, transforms Frodo's complaint into something profound. Pity, Gandalf explains, is what stopped Bilbo's hand, a moment of mercy and morality, even in the face of evil. Frodo, blinded by the immediacy of the harm Gollum caused, can't yet see the grander design at play. He thinks that Gollum's death would have prevented future evil, but Gandalf sees it differently. He recognizes that by sparing Gollum, Bilbo unknowingly left room for grace to intervene. When Frodo declares that Gollum deserves death, Gandalf counters with a timeless truth. Deserves death? Many that live deserve death, and many who die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Then do not be too quick to deal out death and judgment, for even the very wise cannot see all ends. This line strikes me as a rebuke to not only Frodo's limited understanding, but also to the modern mindset that rushes to judgment, cutting short the possibility of redemption or unseen good. Tolkien, I believe, wasn't just talking about Gollum or even the story at hand. He was making a broader statement about life, morality, and perhaps capital punishment. But above all, he was speaking to the transcendent nature of good and evil in Middle-earth. As a devout Catholic, Tolkien's belief in grace, the idea that God works in human life beyond what we can fathom, permeates his work. Frodo's desire to kill Gollum doesn't allow room for that grace, for what God, or El Luvatar, as Tolkien names him in the Silmarillion, might still accomplish through Gollum's life. Bilbo's act of pity, sparing Gollum, was not a mistake but part of a higher purpose, a manifestation of grace in the face of what seemed to be only darkness. This, to me, is the heart of Tolkien's narrative. It's why the destruction of the ring happened the way it did. Frodo's effort brought him to the edge of the fiery abyss, but it was not by his strength that the ring was destroyed. Had Frodo been the one to cast the ring into the flames, the story would have left no room for grace. Instead, Tolkien shows us that human effort alone is not enough. It takes us to a point, but grace, the mysterious and transcendent force that defies human understanding, must carry us the rest of the way. Without Gollum, the ring would never have been destroyed. Frodo would have succumbed to its power, becoming the very thing he sought to destroy. In the end, it wasn't Frodo's willpower that saved Middle-earth, but the unlikely intervention of Gollum, the very creature Frodo once wished dead. Grace, in its most surprising form, stepped in to complete what Frodo could not. And here lies the lesson Frodo learns. Human effort is valuable, but not indispensable. We may strive, we may fight, but there are forces at work beyond what we see. Bilbo was meant to find the ring, just as he was meant to let Gollum live. Gandalf's wisdom, his reminder to Frodo, is that to defeat evil, sometimes we must adopt a passive activity, to step back and look at the larger picture. We have limits as mortals, but that does not mean we should abandon action. Rather, we must recognize that our actions are only one piece of a larger design. Tolkien's message, one that resonates through Gandalf's words and Elrond's counsel, is clear. The road must be trod, but it will be very hard. Neither strength nor wisdom will carry us far upon it. This quest may be attempted by the weak with as much hope as the strong. Yet, such is oft the course of deeds that move the wheels of the world. Small hands do them because they must, while the eyes of the great are elsewhere. This theme, this acknowledgement of human limitation and the need for grace, is what gives Tolkien's work its heart and soul. To strip these elements away, as certain modern adaptations like The Rings of Power have done, is to gut the story of its true essence. The temptation to modernize Tolkien's work, to make it more palatable for contemporary audiences by removing or downplaying its religious and philosophical underpinnings, creates something that feels hollow and soulless. It's like removing the spine from a body and expecting it to still stand. What some fail to understand is that Tolkien's work is not just a fantasy adventure. It's a deeply spiritual and moral tale. One where the greatest victories come not from brute strength or intellect, but from mercy, humility, and grace. When modern adaptations attempt to reshape Middle-earth in the image of modern ideologies, they may succeed in creating something that looks visually grand, but what remains is a shell, a world that lacks the deeper currents of grace, redemption, and the unseen hand of Providence. In trying to make Tolkien's world more modern, more palatable for today's audiences, we risk losing the very things that give it meaning. Without these moral and spiritual themes, the story becomes just another fantasy world, devoid of the heart that has made it resonate for generations. Tolkien's works endure because they speak to something universal, something that goes beyond politics, trends, or cultural shifts. They speak to the timeless struggle between good and evil, and the mysterious ways in which grace can act through even the most unlikely of characters, like Gollum. And without that, Middle-earth loses its soul.